Here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is Tuesday afternoon here in our Milwaukee studios, ready to give you the news as it happens over the next 2 hours, as we do every Monday through Friday here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. This new venture, not a show, from Fox Local and from Fox 6 here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. As we get you a number of stories and caught up on the day so far and what's to come over the next couple hours here, let's start with this. What a difference a few hours makes as we give you a live look at downtown Milwaukee. Here's the change. Not only blue skies, but you can see the buildings, which was not the case early this morning, as we had a whole lot of fog and rain rolling through the city and all of southeastern Wisconsin at parts of the morning. Really made a mess of the morning commute, but much nicer now with those blue skies, and just what a difference those hours have made. Nice to see the sun back in Milwaukee, and it's 68 degrees too, already pushing close to 70 here. We will certainly take that. Something else we're tracking, of course, for you, the big news from overseas, the meeting between President Donald Trump and leaders from Saudi Arabia, his first stop on his first main foreign tour as president here in this second term, leading the United States. That is underway as the president landed in Saudi Arabia this morning. There's been a series of meetings, an investors conference, and more, and we will bring you that live. Next up is a state dinner planned between officials from those two countries, and we'll try to get you a little bit of that, as well as some of the news already made out of the president's trip to the Middle East today as that happens. And then we're also tracking what's happening inside of this courtroom in New York City. This would be the trial of Sean Diddy Combs on racketeering and sex trafficking charges. We already have had opening statements this week. The trial is underway, including testimony from R&B singer Cassie, a former girlfriend of Combs, who took the witness stand in this sex trafficking trial today, a day after prosecutors showed jurors some of the video of a beating Combs had from 2016, where he beat Cassie, the R&B singer, in a hotel room, and there is video of that. Meanwhile, the defense attorney in her opening statement said, look, this is not a domestic violence trial. This is a sex trafficking and racketeering trial. And while Combs may not be a perfect man, he is not guilty of the crimes that he is charged with, according to the defense attorney. So as that continues, we're keeping an eye on that as well. But we do want to start with this. Ron DeSantis is on a tour of the United States. The Florida governor in Ohio today just stepped to the podium. Let's listen in to what the Florida governor and former presidential candidate is saying.
Extend my congratulations for the national championship victory. There was a time when that national championship really went through the state of Florida. It's been a while since any of our schools have been at that level. We think we may see something out of the Florida Gators this year. We had high hopes for the Seminoles a couple years ago, so we'll see what happens. But we do have a lot of similarities, including on political and governance. And this term limits movement is something I've been a part of for a number of years. I served 3 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives prior to becoming governor. I always remind people that I've recovered from that experience, but that experience did leave a mark about how Washington works and how the incentives to do really good policy are just skewed away from that. People get up there and basically they're told you got to pay your dues, you got to stay there, and the seniority and the longevity, and people want that to be their career. We have members that have been there for 30, 40 years, including people like Nancy Pelosi. That is not, I think, how the founding fathers envisioned this. I thought they thought at the time, you're going to get on horseback from somewhere in Virginia and go up to New York, which is where the capital was originally, or go to Philadelphia, eventually Washington, D.C. That's not something you're going to want to be doing for 30 years. And so they talked about the need for term limits and decided, you probably don't need it. But I think that the incentives have really changed now. Even though Congress is almost universally disapproved of by the public year after year, 95, 98% of incumbents are reelected. It's not enough to say, well, people can just vote people out, because the incumbents have skewed the system and financing and campaign regulations to be able to make it difficult to dislodge them. But this Article 5 convention from the states is something that Florida has certified. We now have more and more states, up to 12, and this really just started a few years ago in earnest. Ohio is naturally the next state to take this on and do. And I think it would be important to advance the movement of term limits. But I also think just Ohio being an important state politically in the history of our country, but certainly right now in modern and with the modern Republican Party, it being one of the strongest Republican states now that has a large population, I think symbolically would be really, really important. You look at the national debt, you look at the lack of productivity in Congress. I'm also a supporter, full disclosure, of the balanced budget resolution that Ohio has passed, Florida's passed. I think we're now up to 27, 28 states. I think you're going to end up seeing that get into the 30s very soon. I think the incentives for them to basically bankrupt the country are strong. If you had a balanced budget amendment, it would change the incentives. If you had term limits, it will change the incentives. You know you have a limited amount of time, so make something of it. Do some big things that are actually going to leave a legacy that you can look back on. And I also think it's important that you serve in the House, you serve in the Senate. That's great, and do that, but at some point, you ought to live under the laws that you pass and see whether that was good work or not. And what happens in modern Congress, once they get into that, they kind of become part of a separate political class that's not really ever back in normal society in many instances, because even when people serve 20, 30 years, a lot of times they just stay in Washington after that. So this is a very positive reform. I think if the Founding Fathers were here today, people like James Madison would support term limits, giving all the changes that have happened over these many, many decades. And I have never seen an issue, and Representative Workman hit it right on the head, it's not a partisan issue. Republican, Democrat, rich, poor, male, female, black, white, it doesn't matter. People support term limits. You ought to do the right thing for the right reason, but this happens to also be very good politics for the members of the Ohio legislature to sign up for, because people are going to want to see this as something that is that is getting legs, and it will get legs. And if Ohio comes, that's going to lead to many more states, I think, pretty shortly doing it. And as you build, you really, really have strong men. Now, people say, well, you've never done a convention of the states. Could you have a runaway convention and just have them write an entirely new constitution? The answer to that is basically no. There's two ways to propose amendments. The Congress can propose it with 2/3 of each body, or the states can propose it with 2/3 of the states, which would be 34 states. So you can do that. Ratifying it is the same no matter if Congress or the state proposes it. It requires 3/4 of the states of this country, 38 states, to ratify an amendment to the Constitution. I don't think 38 states are going to ratify the work of a, quote, runaway convention. But even if you're concerned about that, there's nothing preventing Ohio, if they certify this, for putting restrictions on what the delegates are allowed to do. You can have the governor recall delegates that are straying from that. I don't think it would come to that. I really don't. Term limits is popular. It could absolutely get 3/4 of the states to be ratified. You know, really crazy changes, like, you know, people have talked about, oh, they could go after the Second Amendment. None of that is going to have any chance to get ratified. So I don't think it's an appropriate concern. And I also think if that's a concern you had, you're basically saying that the Founding Fathers got it wrong. I think the Founding Fathers got it right. I think they knew that constitutions periodically needed to be amended, not something you should do lightly. It's not something you should do every year, but sometimes they needed that. And if you lodged it only in Congress, if Congress was the problem, then the people would have no recourse to make the changes that are necessary. So the states created the federal government, not the other way around. It was only natural that the states would also be able to propose amendments to the Constitution, understanding that no matter who proposes it, the states or the Congress, 3/4 of the states ratify any changes to the Constitution. So I commend the Speaker, I commend the representatives here in Ohio for doing this. This is kind of a passion project of mine. I've been involved in this issue for a number of years. I've rarely seen an issue that no matter what audience I'm speaking in front of will get a more positive response in any part of the state of Florida, or heck, any place I've been in the country where this has come up. People know that this is the right thing to do. So I look forward to seeing progress here. If there's anything we can do to help in other states, I'm willing to do it because I do think it's important for the future of the country. And with that, we'll take some questions.
As Florida governor there, Ron DeSantis discusses some of the efforts he's pushing for in other states, not just his home state of Florida, but they're in Ohio as well. We want to switch from one governor's address to another, as we'll take you now to Minnesota. This is not Governor Tim Walz, but a representative from the Department of Public Safety there. Tim Walz was just at the podium discussing some of the wildfires the state of Minnesota is dealing with. 3 major fires right now burning north and northwest of Duluth, Minnesota. And these are members of the Minnesota Department of Public Safety discussing the firefighting efforts there, as well as how they hope to get those fires under control. Let's listen in live.
Call for service in greater Minnesota, as well as just across the entire state. These are really unprecedented conditions that we're seeing not only in the northern end of the state, but also the warnings just that exist across Minnesota as a whole. And I do encourage everyone just to please heed the warnings that are out there. Let the firefighters do the work that they've been called to do. And bear in mind, a lot of our local first responders, these are volunteers that are serving their community. They've been working around the clock with very little or no sleep, so getting this additional support is much needed. And Minnesota is really exceptional at providing mutual aid to our partners, and this has been an all hands on deck from a local, state, and federal response. So we appreciate the partnerships that have existed for quite some time, and this is certainly being demonstrated in the days previous as well as in the days coming up. Just want to provide a little bit of an overview of what the Department of Public Safety is doing. We are here to support our local agencies as well as our state partners as well as our federal partners. Specifically, the State Fire Marshal Division has working relationships every day with our local fire service agencies. They are embedded not only with the Minnesota Interagency Fire Center, but also assisting on the ground with staging management. Employee resources to assist with protecting structures that might be threatened. We also have specialists that are working around the clock to help mobilize fire departments from around the state. We have 2 regions that are actively supporting from local fire departments to help support local fire departments that are being impacted by this major event in northern Minnesota. The Minnesota State Fire Chiefs Association is across the state and actually partners with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety and State Fire Marshal to get resources from local fire departments across the state to help support these efforts and provide also backfill to give some of these fire departments a little bit of a rest so that they can serve their local communities. We will continue to support that through the mutual aid system and to support our state and federal partners in the days to come. Also, our Homeland Security and Emergency Management Division is also actively working with this incident and partnering with our state and federal partners to support the ongoing operation to make sure that as resources become depleted, as we look towards the future, that we have enough resources to continue the operation to suppress these fires and to get communities back into a safe environment. We have regional program coordinators that are on the ground supporting local operations, including the Sheriff's Office, the Rescue Squad that has been instrumental in helping with evacuations and keeping the area safe. We also have stood up an active monitoring posture within our statewide emergency operations center to field any requests that are coming from the field to ensure that all the state agencies and federal partners are collaborating and working together, which has been great over the last few days. And we're ready to look at the big picture, as we have been doing over the last several days since Sunday, of the ongoing threat that exists not only in northern Minnesota, but just across the state of Minnesota as if any additional incidents do occur. We are sharing information with all state agencies. We've also briefed our FEMA region just so that they're tracking and that we're ready to pivot and increase any monitoring or any additional support that we can to continue to support operations on the ground. And the one thing that I also want to point out is while this incident is active and the firefight is ongoing, we are here for the long haul. Recovery is going to be vitally important for the communities that are being impacted. So we will be here in the days and weeks and months to come to help this area recover once the flames are extinguished. As you can see, some of the pictures that are just being displayed, this is a significant event. This is a beautiful area of Minnesota, which is bound in just natural habitat, but this is a very dangerous area right now. We have pilots that are doing
And apologies for that, having some trouble with the feed there coming from our affiliate in Minnesota. Before it hopefully gets back up, I'll just say a little bit about what we're seeing here. This all comes after Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota decided to send the National Guard in to help the firefighting efforts in the northern part of that state. And let me take you off of the frozen screen there for a second. This is the Wisconsin Live Desk, but of course covering the news from our state to our west here, our partner state on that border. The Minnesota wildfires have grown dramatically, including 3 major fires burning, as you heard, in the northern part of the state. That would be near Duluth. I believe this feed just came back. You're seeing, I believe, a member of the U.S. Army there, the Minnesota National Guard, discussing the efforts. The Jenkins Creek fires spread from about 1,500 acres on Monday to 6,800 acres as of this morning. The Camp House fire has grown about 10 times in size, from about 1,200 acres on Monday to about 12,000 by this morning. So you're seeing some of the visual representation there of just how large these are getting. Let's listen in back live to the efforts in Minnesota.
One Chinook and one Blackhawk. And the one Blackhawk is equipped with external hoist capability in case it's needed, God forbid, in an emergency or something like that. But, you know, we are ready because of the training that I said we do with our DNR. You know, our motto, always ready, always there, I think is relevant in this case. And I'm extremely proud of the partnership that we have with our DNR and our national partners to combat this type of disaster when it happens in the state, and proud of our soldiers and airmen who support us each and every day. You know, we live here, we serve here, and we work here. And we'll continue to do what we can to support this effort and be ready for what's next. With that, I think I'll turn it over to the governor and the team for any questions if there are any.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you. Another thank you for all the folks working on this. The coordination is there. Minnesota knows how to do this. The systems are in place. Folks have been alerted, and I appreciate the point from Assistant Commissioner Cunningham talking about, because people are going to be interested in this. We're still in the fight. There's a long ways to go here, but there'll be the recovery and the damage assessment. Those will go on. We will start to see that. Contact, as you heard, has already been made with FEMA, and my team, before I came over here, contact with the Trump administration to let them know this is an ongoing developing situation that will take some time, and we'll see when it's all over and the assessments come in if we're going to need some of that federal assistance. But with that, any of us would take some questions. Yes.
Danny Spiewak, Carolyn. Can someone just, whether it's you or anybody up on the panel, just explain the scale of this?
Yeah.
Historically, what does this look like?
I might let you. More fire experience.
You know, overall, what's the scale of this? It's hard to say because the fires continue to grow. But as of this morning, I think we have had over 37,000 acres of fires, and in an average year, give me a moment here. I think in an average year we have about 12,000 acres. So we've already had over 3 times over as many fire acres as in a normal full year, and it's only the middle of May. This is usually our busiest time of year for fires, in April and May. So it's not an unusual season, but it's been a really tough year.
And based on the current forecast and outlook for the summer, I know MPCA talked about this in terms of wildfire smoke and things last week, but like, it sounds like you do think that this is going to be a longer season or a worse season for the dry, hot overall forecast this summer, or is it hard to say right now?
I'm not a meteorologist. I'm a forester by training. So, you know, we're hearing some predictions for the summer. It could be challenging.
Quinn Gorham, KPPC, Northern News Now, KUIC. I am wondering if either you, Director, or Commissioner Storm, could talk a little bit about how this springtime kind of fire outbreak we're seeing compares to years past. I mean, is it typical to see this kind of fire in the spring? I mean, this is something that I feel like usually comes in late summer.
In Minnesota, our typical fire season begins as soon as the snow melts. We've got a lot of dead, dry fuels out there before things green up. So from when the snow melts, fire season. We sometimes have a second fire season in the fall. Sometimes there's not much. In my first half of my career, generally there was snow through March and into April. Sometimes we had some fires in March, but the heavy season was April and May. Over the last several years, the fire seasons have started earlier. We've had fires in February. We've had fires in January, when normally there's snow cover that doesn't allow fires to spread. So the weather.
As we get the latest on those wildfires in the northern part of Minnesota affecting us, it is the Wisconsin Live Desk, but how often do we get to show you a live picture from Saudi Arabia as the president's visit to the Middle East continues? This is day one of the president's visit, most of it today in Riyadh, the city in Saudi Arabia, as President Trump has had a full day of events on this first main foreign trip of his second term. What you're seeing now is the final event of this packed day in Riyadh. It's at the birthplace of the first Saudi state. They are preparing both the president and the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, who is kind of the de facto ruler of the Saudi Arabian country, will have an opulent state dinner now this evening at this UNESCO heritage site, the birthplace of the first Saudi state. It's a site of a major development project as well that has been championed by the Crown Prince, and that will be the final event of the day for both of these world leaders now, as we're seeing the motorcade as it arrives at this site. And I believe, because of the American flag on the front, that yes, that is President Donald Trump there arriving for the final event of his day in Saudi Arabia, a state dinner tonight between Trump and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, as he is known by nickname there. Some of the other events that have come from this day as we watch the proceedings happen half a world away. If you're wondering about time zones, it's almost 9 p.m. there in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, as it's almost 1 p.m. here, so eight hours ahead of us here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as the president and the crown prince continue their visit. This historical site, also a site of new development and new investment from Saudis into what is the birthplace of the first Saudi state. Some of the other information to come out of the meetings today, and there has been a lot, that is for sure, as the president and the crown prince held a press conference, signed a series of agreements together as well, and then also attended an investors conference as well. Some of the more recent news to come out of the event today, as I try to see if there's any audio we can listen to. There you go, you're hearing some of the music and the ceremony underneath this arrival from the President of the United States to this final event. It's supposed to be a quite lavish state dinner thrown in his honor in Saudi Arabia today. One of the things to come out of this, the president has said that he is going to ease sanctions on Syria. These were remarks before investors today. President Trump said he's going to move to normalize relations with Syria and actually lift sanctions on the new government in charge in Syria to give the country a, quote, chance at peace. And Trump said that effort came at the urging of the Saudi crown prince and as well as the Turkish president, Erdogan, saying it's a new government that will hopefully succeed. That was the words of President Donald Trump, saying and adding to that, quote, I say good luck, Syria, show us something special. Of course, the al-Assad regime was overthrown recently. A group that had been seen as rebels now leads the country, but a chance, according to the U.S. president, for peace in Syria. And the UN has responded to that already, saying the easing of sanctions from the U.S. to Syria is a positive development, inviting a broader investment in the war-torn country. The lifting of sanctions could help the reconstruction of Syria, could help the Syrian people recover after more than a decade of conflict, according to that UN spokesman. And the United Nations is also continuing to support the reconstruction of Syria, whether that is physical or psychological, saying for it to be a country where all Syrians of all faiths, of all ethnicities and minorities feel safe and represented. Some of the other news to come out of the president's first main foreign trip, he did take a trip to the Vatican to attend the funeral of the late Pope Francis, but this was the first main full planned foreign trip of his presidency to the Middle East, starting with Saudi Arabia, as we're watching him enter this historic site in Riyadh. Some of the other news to come from this, let me pull up some of the information for you right now. The president also discussed wars in other parts of the world, including in Ukraine, the war continuing between Russia and Ukraine. There's a chance that the president could divert part of his travel later this week to Turkey. That's because Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be among some of the top U.S. officials going to Turkey on Thursday for talks trying to end the war in Ukraine. The president said he has been working relentlessly to end the bloodshed. Quote, "We'll see if we can get it done." And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he'll be waiting for his Russian counterpart, Russian President Vladimir Putin, to come to Istanbul and have formative peace talks. We'll see if that will happen. Putin has not said whether or not he will show up. And Trump said as part of this today that he could make a change to his plans and go to Turkey to take part in some of those talks if necessary. One of the other things the president has called for during this visit today is for Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. The president said it was his fervent hope and wish, a dream even, that Saudi Arabia would do that, although adding, do it in your own time, that it would be a special day in the Middle East with the whole world watching when Saudi Arabia joins us. The Abraham Accords, of course, a recognition long maintained between Israel as well as Egypt, I believe. The Abraham Accords in Trump's first term saw both Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates recognizing Israel. Morocco and Sudan have also had their own deals recognizing Israel as its place in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, has maintained recognition of Israel is tied to the establishment of a Palestinian state. That was along the lines of Israel's borders back in 1967. And under the Biden administration, there was a push. As we just lost that feed, I apologize. Let me see if we can get it up for you. It looks like almost across the board, they are down. I think we got it back now. There. Going back to the Biden administration, there were efforts, a push for Saudi Arabia to recognize Israel as part of a major diplomatic deal. That was in place and on track until the Hamas attacks of October 7th, 2023, and then the ensuing war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas really upended those plans and sent the entire Middle East region into one of the more diplomatically fraught periods in its history. And that war continues despite what proved to be a temporary ceasefire recently. Some of the other things that we have learned from the president during his visit today, discussing the American economy as well as addressing this Saudi investor conference, hoping that this visit will lead to lots of investment back and forth between the two wealthy nations. Trump told the Saudis in a speech saying that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, is a, quote, incredible man. That is someone who has come under much scrutiny for the death of a Washington Post journalist and other human rights violations that others accuse the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia of. The relationship with President Donald Trump has always been much easier for the Saudi Crown Prince. And some of the other things happening today, the president, as we go back to Syria, has agreed to say hello to the new president of Syria while in Saudi Arabia tomorrow. So this possible meeting between the two leaders could be quite a moment for the future of Syria as well. At that investor conference, the president received claps and cheers and whistles. Lee Greenwood's proud to be an American, as it did so often during the campaign of last year, 2024, played as Trump took the stage, this time halfway around the world from America. The Crown Prince spoke first at that conference under a massive chandelier with both of the flags, American and Saudi, emblazoned behind him. President Trump had earbuds with translations of the speech in his ears, and then the president himself stood in front of a giant flag and addressed that investor conference as well. He says he's pushing Saudi Arabia in a speech for a new nuclear deal with Iran as well. The United States would have held multiple rounds of negotiations over the advancing program. That comes after, in his first term in office, Trump withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal reached between Iran and the U.S. and other world powers. That sets the stage for more years of tension while Gulf Arab states were kind of angry toward President Barack Obama for initially striking a deal without involving them. Now countries of the region are pushing for de-escalation, with tensions quite high and the Israel-Hamas war continuing in the Gaza Strip. And as you can see, Senate Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as well as the man front and center there, Elon Musk, among the many members connected with the Trump administration who are joining for this first visit in Saudi Arabia. And the president, along with the Crown Prince, continuing their discussions there in front of what looked to be kind of 3D rendering of some of the developments and some of the historical sites at this location in Riyadh. We are coming up on 1 o'clock here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, so we want to take a short break for you as we continue to roll on. We're here every day from 12:30 until 2:30, handling the news as it comes to us. If it's here in Milwaukee and it matters, we bring it to you. If it's our neighbors to the west in Minnesota, some of the wildfires they're dealing with, we'll bring you that as well. And of course, the news to all the world. Whatever the President of the United States is doing matters around the globe, and certainly here in Wisconsin as he continues his first foreign trip in Saudi Arabia. We'll get you more of that and anything else that pops up here on the Wisconsin Live Desk after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, Carl Deffenbaugh back with you just past 1 o'clock here on the Wisconsin Live Desk from our Fox local studios here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, bringing you the news as it happens across our great state, across the country, and around the world, as many different modes of transportation have been discussed related to President Donald Trump's first major foreign trip of his second term. Golf carts, not one of them necessarily, but that's what the president and, well, as Saudi leaders are in right now as they go around this historic site and UNESCO World Heritage Site in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in preparation for the state dinner, a lavish state dinner thrown under what almost looks like a full moon there. I didn't check to see what state of the moon phase we are in today, but the visit continues for the president in Saudi Arabia, largely alongside the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, as well as all of the different members of the Saudi ruling family and leaders, investors, and more that the president has met during this first day of his trip, now to be capped off by this state dinner today. Some of the other things that we're tracking back a little bit closer to home, we'll get you out to California, where the Menendez brothers resentencing trial continues. And as you're seeing that packet of podiums there outside of the LA County Courthouse, If we get word on what exactly is happening inside the courtroom and some of the other news of the day from California relating to the Menendez brothers trial, we will certainly bring that to you, because that is a trial that has received much attention throughout the years, certainly when the brothers were first convicted of the murder of their parents. Now the entire resentencing coming on the heels of a quite popular documentary series, as well as a kind of true crime series as well, that brought to light some of the abuse that those brothers suffered years ago at the hands of their father before the murder of their parents. If that comes to be, we will let you know what's happening there. Same goes for what's inside this courtroom. We go from one coast to the other, from the west to the east, as this is a New York City courtroom here, where the second day of testimony in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs continues, with one of the more notable people called by the prosecution as a witness on the stand today. That would be R&B singer Cassie, who has been testifying throughout the morning there in New York City, well into the afternoon now, as they just took a lunch break and are now back on the stand. Some of the information to come out so far: Cassie recalled an incident where Combs left her during one of these freak-offs, these sex parties that Combs reportedly would hold over days and days at his LA home and other locations. Combs said that he was going to confront a rival record executive at a diner nearby and kind of sprang into action after a bodyguard came in and told him of the exec's whereabouts. Combs and the bodyguard, kind of dressed in black clothes, grabbed guns from a safe, according to the testimony of Cassie this afternoon in that courtroom, loaded into an SUV. Meanwhile, Cassie says she was crying, screaming, saying, "Please don't do anything stupid." And it's like she wasn't even there. She has detailed some of the depths of their relationship, from when she was a teenager to then a party on her 21st birthday, as their relationship grew into a sexual relationship as well, and then her involvement in the so-called freak-offs as well, as the prosecutors continue to question her and other witnesses as part of their side of the trial. Sean Combs charged with sex trafficking and racketeering charges that could send him to prison for years and years if he is convicted. And then a much lighter story here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We get the nice view of downtown Milwaukee there. The flag's at half staff, but not blowing around too much, as it's not a particularly breezy day after we had so much in the way of fog and rain and all the rest this morning. It's cleared up actually pretty nicely here on this Tuesday afternoon back here in Wisconsin. We're going to take a short break, and on the other side, we got a bit of a fun story for you. Something brought to us from AT&T, some surprising stats you might not guess about parents paying for their child's cell phone bill. Will I admit which side I fall on this, as both a parent and a child of parents? That's coming up on the other side of this break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, Carl Defenbaugh back with you here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is 1:10 on this Tuesday afternoon, covering all the news as it happens, starting from here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, around the rest of the state, and the country as well. A few of the other things that we're trying to keep an eye on for you. This is a live feed inside Capitol Hill, where, as you can see, a number of reporters are waiting to hear from lawmakers. Usually this is kind of a quiet scene. This is actually a fair amount of people, different people that work on the Hill, reporters and the like. So that makes me think that we're expecting someone pretty soon, and if that happens, we'll take you there live. Of course, also keeping an eye on what's happening well overseas, as we see some camels in the background. Not native to Wisconsin, to my knowledge. This is coming to us from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, as President Donald Trump's first day of his first main foreign trip continues in Saudi Arabia, a similar itinerary to what he had in his first term, choosing the Middle East as a place to focus on business investments in the United States with fellow wealthy nations. Some of the things to track on this visit, of course, the contrast between how President Joe Biden previously dealt with Saudi Arabia and the difference in terms of warmth and tone between President Donald Trump and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Trump calling MBS a friend and a, quote, incredible man, even someone who U.S. officials have tied to the death of a Washington Post journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, who U.S. intelligence officials have accused MPS of ordering the killing of that journalist years ago. It was a quite frosty relationship between the Crown Prince and previous President Joe Biden. Very different, as you're seeing some of the pomp and circumstance all around a presidential visit to Saudi Arabia from President Donald Trump in his second term. And with that, we want to get you back stateside because Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, just stepped to the podium there on Capitol Hill. Let's listen in to what he's discussing on this Tuesday afternoon.
Donald Trump isn't just blurring the lines between public service and personal profit, he's erasing it. That's not just speculation. In fact, it's backed by overwhelming evidence. He is jeopardizing America's national security to line his own pockets. That's why this morning I announced I will be placing a hold on all political DOJ nominees until we get more answers on this so-called deal. Until we learn the truth about this deal, I will do my part to block the galling and truly breathtaking politicization of DOJ. We've never seen anything like it. In other heinous news for Americans this weekend, the House Republicans unveiled their plan for the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. The largest cut to Medicaid in American history. 14 million Americans, at least 14 million, would be ripped off of their health insurance under this proposal. Why? Tax breaks for billionaires. It's appalling to take people's health care away, to make them sicker. To give tax breaks to billionaires is just appalling. It's not what America wants, and it's not what America needs. Not only will millions of Americans lose coverage, for many others, their premiums will skyrocket. Talk about lowering costs, this ain't a way to do it, that's for sure. And hospitals, rural, urban, and in between, will close. Many, many people will lose their jobs, and many more will lose their health coverage. States will scramble with their budgets, and American families will be left out to dry. For months, the Republicans claimed that their tax plan wouldn't touch Medicaid. Now we know that's a bold-faced lie. They were afraid to admit it, but now they can't avoid it. It's slashing Medicaid more than it ever has been slashed before. It's cruel, it's heartbreaking. Senate Democrats will continue to expose this devastating plan and fight for American families to keep their hard-earned benefits. Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Leader. And let's be clear about what the Republicans are up to on health care. They're basically gaslighting the American people, telling folks that fraud, waste, and abuse are everywhere, and the Democrats are simply going along with all of it. Now we have the Congressional Budget Office, which is the go-to arbiter of the facts in this area, say that 100% of the cuts have nothing to do with waste, fraud, and abuse, nothing. They're basically terminating coverage, denying services like home care, which seniors see as precious, and also in rural areas making it harder to get hospitals and nursing homes and providers to cover care. And the second point that I want to mention is when you look at the entirety of the Republican response on health care, what they are doing is everything possible to keep eligible people from being able to get coverage. They put them through so much red tape. That's essentially what some of these new things are all about. They are bureaucracy requiring steps that ensure that it's hard to be eligible for services. So we feel that health care is basic to American families. Nothing is more precious than to be able to go to bed at night knowing that you're going to get decent health care. And what the Republicans do in their health care provisions in the reconciliation package is walk back health security for millions and millions of Americans, all to make sure that folks at the very top of the ladder can come up with another package of benefits, benefits that in so many instances defy common sense and are only there in order to give yet more privileges to the people at the top. We're for a tax code that gives everybody in America the chance to get ahead, and that's what we're going to battle for in this process.
Thank you, Senator Wyden. Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Leader Schumer. Look, this week, President Trump and congressional Republicans are pushing forward with their plan to give billionaires and corporate special interests more tax breaks, all paid for by taking health coverage away from millions of Americans and, by the way, by adding trillions to the national debt. It is wrong, it's dangerous, and it's devastating to people, our small rural hospitals, our communities, our economy. Millions of families count on Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act for essential health care. And this Republican bill to take coverage away from many of our constituents will result in untreated diseases, packed emergency rooms. If you think wait times are long at emergency rooms now, they will get worse, and even higher prescription drug prices, because this bill exempts more drug products from negotiation with Medicare. When I was governor of New Hampshire, we expanded Medicaid with Republican support, because even though we didn't agree on everything, we understood that we're all better off when people are healthy. At a time when families continue to struggle with rising costs, I can think of few ideas as ill-advised as this one from President Trump and congressional Republicans. They are working, this bill directly raises health care costs on millions of Americans, just as other costs continue to go up. But this proposal to take Medicaid coverage away from people doesn't just put the families who are going to lose coverage at risk. No, this proposal threatens our entire healthcare system. Healthcare providers all across the country, especially rural doctors and hospitals, are only able to keep their doors open because of the care that they provide to patients who have Medicaid and Medicare coverage. If millions of people can no longer afford to go to the doctor and get the care that they need, many of these facilities will have no choice but to shut down altogether. And when people have their insurance taken away, they end up getting their care in emergency rooms when their condition is acute. This drives up waiting times, costs, and look, it will drive up insurance premiums even on the private health insurance market for everyone. The bottom line here is clear. If this billionaire tax break at the expense of the middle class passes, more people will get sick, our economy will weaken, and an awful lot of people, an awful lot of our fellow Americans, our friends and neighbors, will be hurt. Thank you.
Senator Welch.
Thank you. Just on that plane, Senator Schumer, he's kind of an old-fashioned guy. He puts like national security ahead of presidential traveling comfort. Shocking. You know, we're at crunch time here, and there's a lot of suffering and anxiety throughout the country, especially folks who are struggling week to week, month to month to pay their bills. And we're at a moment where that suffering is going to be intensified by a law that Congress is considering. Folks need health care. And folks need it in red states and they need it in blue states. Folks need health care, whether they voted for Trump or they voted for Harris. They need it for the kids. They need it for their older parents. And we are on the cusp of voting on a bill that makes it legal to boot seniors out of nursing homes, that makes it legal to deny disabled kids Medicaid, that makes it legal to move to a different topic, to take $2 for a meal that's provided by SNAP off the table. This is what we're actually considering, to make it legal to take away health care for kids and for seniors. That is so outrageous. And why is it? It's not because my Republican colleagues don't want their folks that they represent to have access to health care. They're intimidated by Trump. This is totally outrageous that we even have to have a discussion about taking away health care. Not to mention all the consequences, the insecurity, the suffering. And then in rural America, where we depend on those hospitals, they won't be able to operate when we take away Medicaid. They won't be able to operate. You know what will happen? They'll work hard, and that'll be in red states and blue states. And they'll keep providing services, even when it's free, until they can't anymore. And it's an absolute disgrace that this Congress is even having a discussion about taking away health care from children, from seniors, from disabled people. We don't need to do it. And in the version of fiscal responsibility that the Republicans have to pay for this tax cut that largely goes to billionaires and to very wealthy people. And by the way, in Vermont, when I walk around, people are not saying, Peter, where's my tax cut? They're saying, what's happening to my health care? They're saying, what's happening to my ability to feed my kids? That's what they're asking me, not about this health care. The version of fiscal responsibility is to pay for it by taking away health care, by taking away food stamps, by taking away Meals on Wheels. No is the answer.
Thank you, Peter. And I mentioned on the floor, Trump calls this a big, beautiful bill. We call it the big grift. Greedy Republicans in favor of tycoons. Questions? Yes.
Do you believe David Hogg should remain the vice chair of the DNC?
Up to the DNC. Yes.
What do you make of threats to potentially sanction these Democratic members who went to the ICE facility, even threats from the Trump administration maybe to arrest them? We see a resolution now to maybe toss them from their committees?
Look, the right of peaceful protest is sacrosanct in America. The Trump administration and often its Justice Department doesn't seem to believe in it.
Was that
yes,
peaceful?
Yes.
On the DOJ nominee poll, is there anything specific from DOJ you would want to hear that makes you comfortable with this plain deal, or are you just against it?
On the floor today and in a letter we will be sending, we ask a whole lot of questions, a lot of serious answers. National security threats. You're going to take a plane from another country? And Air Force One is the most complicated piece of aircraft in the world. It needs so much, so much goes into it, a lot of which is classified. We got a lot of questions. Yes. No. Yup. This person. Okay, you get him, Manu. I thought his hand was up.
You said in June of last year, in my meetings with President Biden, I found him to be in command and impressive and wielding influence to make progress on key priorities. But in that same month, Biden apparently did not even recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser. Were you being straight with the American public?
Look, we're just looking forward. Yes.
What's your reaction to President Trump's proposal to direct HHS and CMS
to negotiate lower drug prices so they match what other countries are
Yeah,
paying?
it's very much the same as what he said in 2020. It's all talk, no action. In 2020, he didn't get the results, and I doubt he's going to get them now. A lot of talk, a lot of hype, no action. Thank you, everybody.
Alex, do you want me to take you through that?
Can I catch you later after the...
Yeah, I mean, the point was.
That was the minority leader of the Senate there, speaking along with fellow Democratic senators about the Trump administration and specifically some of the losses to health care that the Democrats think would happen for constituents and for Americans under proposed budget cuts from Republicans now being discussed in President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. We need to take another break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We'll see what we find on the other side after this 120-second break.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is coming up on 1:30 here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. 1 hour behind us, 1 hour to go as we join you each Monday through Friday here on Fox Local and the Fox 6 Milwaukee YouTube channel from 12:30 to 2:30, handling the Wisconsin Live Desk for you. Rolling right along here as it's been quite an interesting day. We could say that in the weather department. If you weren't checking out the Wisconsin weather experts earlier today, well, first of all, you're lost because you didn't get to see Stephanie Barrichello and crew handling things on that wonderful program here on Fox Local. But Steph, as you join us now, you gave me a little bit of a tease during that commercial break, these interesting images you have of the fog in Milwaukee. I'm both surprised to see the sun.
Yeah.
But then also, yeah, it's kind of like Cloud City out there. Take it away.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I knew it would be kind of one of these days where we see some sunshine, but then some fog rolls in from the lake with some of that southeasterly movement of the wind, and then it goes right back out over the lake. It's just, you know what I mean, Milwaukeeans, right? We've dealt with this before. But how cool is this shot? So you can still see some non-dense fog rolling in, covering the tops of the buildings as we look downtown. Not across all of Milwaukee, just in this, specific spot, but also in some other communities up and down the lakeshore. This is more so because we have that lake breeze. So that just means we've got fog out over the lake right now, and that's what's getting pushed into our area. But everybody else has really lucked out and have seen some sunshine since some of the rain earlier this morning. Our Brown Deer camera is looking pretty good, but look at Kenosha. A little bit in the way of thicker fog in that Kenosha camera. That's from Carthage College. And then even in Sheboygan, the lake is in the distance of this live camera, but you can still see more cloud cover near Sheboygan. So it really is one of those days where it just depends on where you are at. As to what type of conditions you're going to see, I think tomorrow is going to be a very similar day too. Not as much in the way of rain like we saw this morning, but we still could see some clouds, some fog at times, just one of those days. Take a look at dew points. It's been some time since we've really talked about dew points, certainly this high. Everybody dealing with muggy conditions with dew points well into the 60s right now, not too far from our air temperatures, which is once again the reason why we had some thicker fog earlier this morning. Air temperatures themselves, you'll notice, still cooler up and down the lakeshore, especially towards the northern lakeshore where there is more cloud cover. But then you get inland and pretty comfortable temperatures in the low 70s. Look at Janesville too. That's where some really warm air is located, right around 79 degrees right now. So we've seen the sun peek through the clouds. Looking at satellite though, you can still see pockets of cloud cover across the area. And then as I pause this and push it out towards the west a little bit more, we have a few little pop-ups, more so just some showers, one just north of Beaver Dam, south of Watertown, Fort Atkinson, just towards the southwest of you guys, and then closer to the Dells, there is a decent cell south of Dodgeville right now too. So we still have a lot of that energy in the area, but the lake breeze is helping us out, pushing a lot of this off towards the west. Inland areas today still could see a few more of these pop-ups from time to time, but most of the rest of our Tuesday afternoon will primarily be dry. And a lot of this moisture is thanks in part to this storm system that is behind me. This is one of those upper level cutoff low pressure systems. You know, we saw it about a week ago as well. We talked about it moving westward instead of eastward, and that's why we're seeing some clouds and rain moving out, you know, from the lake onto land here in Wisconsin. These cutoff low pressure systems, they're exactly that. They're cut off from the main jet stream, so they're not moving the way that they're supposed to. They're kind of wiggling back and forth from west to east and just kind of, you know, meandering in the same position. But the good news is that it's out of here come tomorrow. But the East Coast, I mean, they are feeling the big impacts of that storm system. It's bringing, you know, inches worth of rainfall, and not just today. They've been dealing with this storm system for the past 3 days. So parts of the Carolinas, Virginia, I mean, we're talking over 3-4 inches of rainfall because of this very slow moving storm system. So nothing to complain about here. In fact, the rain is pretty welcome here. We're coming off of about a 7-day dry stretch, so we'll take it. And again, mainly quiet the rest of this afternoon. Also eyeing Thursday. So this is the Storm Prediction Center's severe thunderstorm outlook, or convective outlook is what we like to call them. We show these whenever there's a chance for severe weather. This gives us a better idea of the areas that could see severe weather in general. Now this one is pretty broad, just about the entire state of Wisconsin under that level 2 slight risk, and that is because we're going to see a cold front moving through later Thursday evening, and there will likely be, you know, a decent squall line associated with that cold front. So we'll be watching a line of storms wherever they develop, whether it's in our area or earlier in the day, maybe out west. We'll be watching it move eastward, but it will likely bring us at least a chance for some stronger or severe thunderstorms. So that's what's ahead for Thursday. As we just talked about for today, you know, not too bad of conditions. As we go through the rest of, you'll notice the Tuesday, most of the activity from here is going to stay primarily out towards the west. I do want to mention that fog is going to be back overnight tonight, and it could be dense and lingering into Wednesday morning. We're still going to have some slightly higher dew points all the way through Thursday until that cold front pushes through, so maybe even into Friday, and that could create some foggy conditions. Most of Wednesday looks dry. We're going to do fog again Thursday morning. It's the trend. And then just an idea of what we could potentially see come Thursday. It's still early, so we'll likely still see some changes. But after about your dinner hour and shortly after, we could see that line pushing on through. We have all those same questions, you know, will it maintain its strength, the timing of it all, because it's a little bit later, will that help us out? Will it weaken a bit? Will the lake breeze help us out a little bit? So still a lot of uncertainty here, but once again, expecting a line of thunderstorms along that cold front to push through our area Thursday evening. And since I have you, Carl, if you don't mind, I want to head outside of Wisconsin because there is some notable heat to talk about down towards the south. And if you were watching Wisconsin Weather Experts earlier, I did touch on it briefly. This is a look at current temperatures right now. They out west, the central U.S., from upper plains all the way to southern plains, have had a string of heat. You know, they've been the spots that have stayed sunny and very warm. The Dakotas have seen record temperatures over the last several days. And now that we're talking more about records, today and over the next 3 days, we're looking at Texas. So you can see all of this orange right here across a good chunk of central and southern parts of the state. That's a heat advisory. They are expecting, across a good chunk of the state really, even the spots not under this heat advisory, 100s for high temperatures all the way through Thursday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, expecting daily record high temperatures, but some of these spots could also see their all-time highest temperatures ever recorded in May. Now, places like Austin, Carl, I mean, on average, it's July that they see their first day in the triple digits. It's the middle of May, so they are really experiencing the heat down towards the south. And as we just talked about previously, I mean, even the Dakotas have had a string of 90-degree days over the last couple. So pretty unprecedented heat, summer-like heat ongoing across the central U.S.
It's pretty wild there to see that map of the U.S. and see Bismarck, North Dakota, and New Orleans having the same exact temperature today,
Right?
both in the 80s. That's wild.
And even yesterday, Rhinelander was in the mid-80s, whereas Milwaukee was in the low 70s. So the lake really helped us out, but even Wisconsin has started to see that heat in the last couple of days.
All right, let me ask you this, because you touched on it a little bit. I'll pop that great shot of downtown Milwaukee from our Modern building camera here. Again, explain this to me, Steph. Go science nerd on me. How exactly is this happening? Where you get the blue skies, but you also get that just kind of like misty fog drifting throughout the buildings. It obviously is very humid today, as you had the dew points, and certainly just feel it. Just walk outside if you want to experience that too. But explain it to me. Go science on me.
Of course. So fog in general, we always look to see how much moisture is in the air. So this morning, for example, when we had the air temperature and the dew point the exact same, you know, the moisture or the air was completely saturated. We're talking 100% saturated. And that, you know, created fog all across the area. Now at this point, we have that southeasterly breeze. So there is still fog out over the lake. I mean, Lake Michigan is a body of water, so it's its own moisture source right there. So there is fog over Lake Michigan right now, and then with that lake breeze, it's just pushing some of the fog into the city right now. Now earlier we saw that fog go back out over the lake, and we enjoyed a little period of sunshine, and I still think it'll be this back and forth. If we see the wind turning out of the south, then most of that fog will recede back into Lake Michigan, but it's just going to be one of those kind of wacky days where it's very much back and forth. And you know, there are some spots too, I think Wind Point, in Racine County, up near Port Washington. Their you know, little area juts out into the lake a little bit more, so they're a lot more susceptible to dealing with fog, and the lake breezes, you know, impact them just a little bit more. Even a southerly or northerly breeze can more so be a lake breeze for them, if that makes sense. So those are two spots that still could see fog pretty much all throughout the day.
Interesting. One other thing I like seeing in this shot downtown, the bridge now closing, but it was open in one stretch there near Père Marquette Park, and it appears like the pontoon boats have made their return too, as we're getting close, right, Steph? We're getting close.
Can't wait for that.
All right, let me, since you threw something at me, can I throw something at you completely off topic here? I mentioned this earlier that we were going to touch on this, but the perfect person to do this with is we pop up our poll of the day right now, and if you want to take part in this, you can go to both fox6now.com/poll or scan the QR code there in your upper right part of your screen. Here's a question. When do you think a child should take over their cell phone bill from their parents? And the reason for this, a little bit of backstory here, our producer Delaney Reed in the booth sent this to me, a new survey from AT&T revealing, let's just say, some of the surprising stats about parents paying for their child's cell phone bill. So here we go, Steph. It shows the average age Americans start paying their own cell phone bill is 27. And according to the survey, 18% don't take the reins until they're 40. And then nearly 1 in 3 Americans admit they did not start footing the bill for their cell phone until the age of 30. All right, what you got, Steph? Where do you fall in this?
I think I would say maybe when you have a full-time job.
Yeah,
you know, you have your own income. Now, that being said, and I'm sure you know people like this too, my mom and my sister are still technically, you know, on the same bill because it's cheaper when you have more than one phone, but I'm almost positive my sister still pays. So I guess I can understand, you know, if you share the same line or whatnot, you know what I'm talking about, but you probably should be paying by
Can I be honest with you here? Because, you know, we're just on Fox Local. It's okay.
Oh, boy.
My parents still pay my cell phone bill, Steph.
Stop it. Are you serious?
Yeah.
You have some really nice
I know.
parents.
And
What about Kim? What
they're
about your
not
wife?
asking. She is also on my parents' cell phone bill.
Can I join your family?
I mean, maybe. The more the merrier, apparently. So here's the reason why. They lived overseas for a long period of time, so having the cell phones were basically the only way we could communicate for a while,
Oh,
so it was
sure.
kind of like
Okay.
their gift to keep the communication going between the family.
Okay,
Now that
makes
they're
sense
back
then.
stateside, it's just kind of kept going, so I'm going to keep riding with it.
Wow, I want to be part of your family.
Yeah, well, again, the more the merrier. And then maybe we'll have another category there we'll have to add to the survey. If you want to weigh in, again, fox6now.com/poll or scan the QR code. Having some fun with our weather expert here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. You never know what we're going to cover. That's the beauty of this, right?
That is the fun of it, absolutely.
All right, Steph, we'll let you get back to your actual job there, forecasting
All
back
right.
in the weather deck. And we will be back on the other side of this break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, trying to have some fun with you on a day we have had a lot of serious news as well. We'll see what we find after this commercial break.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Hey, Carl Duffenbaugh back with you on the Wisconsin Live Desk as we keep rolling right along here. A 2-hour not a show each and every day here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Joining you on Fox Local, the FOX6 Milwaukee YouTube channel as well. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, from 12:30 until 2:30. And we will have a report from Madison coming up in just a little bit. Our reporter Jason Calvi, our political reporter, is covering the fallout of a deadly apartment fire in Milwaukee. One of the big issues in that fire, according to the fire chief here in Milwaukee and other officials, is the fact that there were no sprinklers inside of that building. That was up to code because the building was built before those were required, so that building was grandfathered into the state law and into the fire code. In fact, just passed an inspection this spring. But Jason is diving into this with lawmakers in Madison, asking, should that change? Should the law change that other buildings, including older buildings like that one, be brought up to the modern expectations for fire suppression systems inside of those buildings? Once Jason gets done speaking to some of the lawmakers in Madison, we will bring you that in a live report here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Two of the other things we've been tracking, I mentioned this momentarily, but the Menendez brothers resentencing continues inside of that Los Angeles County courthouse. You see behind the podium many different TV news outlets ready for statements from whether it's the new district attorney in LA County or the attorneys representing the Menendez brothers. As soon as someone steps to that podium, we want to bring you the updates from the resentencing that has received national attention. The brothers first convicted decades ago at this point have been in prison prison for the murder of their parents. Now, a possible resentencing brought to light by a new information, a new way of looking at what turned out to be years of abuse at the hands of their father. It's turned into a bit of a political back and forth between the new district attorney and some of the other political leaders in California as well, with those two brothers at the middle of all of this. And as soon as we get some information on that, we'll bring it to you here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. And as I mentioned before, we go from the West Coast to the East. The other very high-profile trial continuing today, the second day of testimony in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, the rap mogul, on sex trafficking and racketeering charges. One of the main people to take the stand we're expecting during the course of this trial has been testifying throughout the day today, and that would be R&B singer Cassie, a longtime girlfriend of Combs, who has been on the stand, I should say, for much of the day today. Hours of testimony this morning. They took a lunch break, and she is back on the stand today with prosecutors asking about the history of their relationship, going back to when she was a teenager, and then as the relationship turned from kind of a mentor in the music world into much more than that, turning into both a girlfriend, a sexual relationship, and then as it progressed into the infamous freak-offs that Combs is accused of holding as part of these racketeering and sex trafficking charges. Cassie, the R&B singer, has delivered some notable testimony already today as it relates to that. Also, an interesting note, Cassie is apparently quite pregnant. She has been on the witness stand holding her pregnant belly at different points, as she has been quite emotional, detailing the different twists and turns of her relationship with Combs over the years on the witness stand in that New York courthouse today. One of the other things, on a much, much lighter note, we can say that here in Wisconsin, it is the Wisconsin Live Desk after all. It's the NFL offseason, but the NFL doesn't really have an offseason, at least not the way the league has things planned. The rollout this week of the NFL schedule. Now, the full NFL schedule is coming out tomorrow. I believe tomorrow evening is when we'll get the full slate of games for the Green Bay Packers and the other 31 NFL teams. But as they have done in years past, the NFL is kind of doling out little bits and pieces of the schedule with their different broadcast partners, and one of those came through today. We'll pop this up for you. ESPN, of course, the host of Monday Night Football each and every Monday night during the NFL season, got to announce a few of those games, including one involving the Packers and the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. This one coming to Lambeau Field in November of this year. The announcement this morning that the Eagles will travel to Green Bay for that November 10th date on Monday Night Football. Of course, these teams have plenty of history, right? Not only in the playoffs, but also going back to game one of the regular season last year when they played all the way down in the Southern Hemisphere in Brazil to get the NFL season started down there. It was the first ever NFL game in Brazil. This time around, the Eagles and Packers are going to meet in a much more traditional format, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, as Jalen Hurts and Jordan Love there in those images will go head-to-head once again November 10th. The schedule release announcement from ESPN and the NFL this morning. Now, that followed news yesterday. One other game that we know on the schedule, another big rivalry for the Pack. That would be against the Chicago Bears. And this time, the announcement came from Fox Sports, of course, partners with us here at Fox 6 and Fox Local. Fox Sports announcing a doubleheader weekend, actually coming the weekend before Christmas. So the game announced was a game between the Bears and the Packers, December 20th. That's going to be in Chicago. If you remember from last year, there was that game, just a tip of a finger, the difference as a field goal potentially could have won it for Chicago. Instead, Green Bay holds on, and we'll see what the latest installation of this rivalry with Jordan Love leading the way against the now second-year starting quarterback for the Bears, Caleb Williams. That will be Bears-Packers in Chicago Saturday, December 20th. Eagles a factor in this as well. As I mentioned, it's a doubleheader. The Eagles and Washington Commanders, speaking of great quarterback matchups there, Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels will face off before that in a back-to-back NFC doubleheader the weekend before Christmas, coming December 20th. Down in Chicago and out in Philadelphia as well. So just a couple of the things we can look forward to before the NFL season. I mentioned that report from Jason Calvi coming from Madison. We're going to see if we can get Jason. I believe I see him in one of those feeds behind me here. We'll get everything figured out microphone-wise and get the latest from Jason Calvi on the other side of this break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
ambiguous for right now because
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Welcome back, rolling right along here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. It is 1:51, and I mentioned this before we went to commercial break there. Checking in not just here in our Milwaukee area, of course joining you here from the FOX6 studios in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but from around the state. It is the Wisconsin Live Desk, and something happening in Madison today could affect a lot of people around the state, certainly here in Wisconsin, in the wake of a deadly apartment fire over the weekend. That has been the big story here in Milwaukee. Our political reporter Jason Calvi is taking the story to lawmakers in Madison. As Jason, we bring you in here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Great to have you back with us. I understand that you've been asking a series of questions to lawmakers in Madison when it comes to the 5 people killed in the fire, but also the different fire suppression possibilities that were not in place inside of that building. No sprinklers inside, no standpipes, with fire officials said are basically an option in stairwells of buildings for firefighters to get water to a fire quickly from those stairwells. Take it away, Jason. What have you now been asking state lawmakers about what happened in Milwaukee and what potentially could happen in other places in the state?
Yeah, we've been asking lawmakers here, Carl, both parties, Republicans and Democrats, if anything needs to change, and particularly if it's time to require, to mandate that older buildings retrofit sprinklers into their buildings. So if you remember our stories that we've been covering this, the apartment had no sprinklers. In fact, it was built just a few years before it was a requirement that buildings have that bigger buildings have sprinklers. So this building was grandfathered in. It was exempted from that state requirement to have those sprinklers. But as we talked with the fire chief, he said things would have turned out totally differently if there were sprinklers inside that building. He thinks there would have not been the loss of life. There wouldn't have been the firefighters putting themselves at risk to rescue people. They went into the smoke filled chambers and pulled people out of those apartment buildings, of those apartment units. They had to put they had big ladder trucks where they rescued people from inside the building as well. And he said, with the sprinklers, it would have made none of that had to have happen. So he was very much talking about how helpful sprinklers are, having those fire sprinklers in buildings to saving lives. And we also yesterday talked with the union that represents what's called sprinkler fitters. So the union, their big job, they train people, the next generation of sprinkler fitters. Those are the people that are going to go into new construction and old construction and install fire sprinklers and standpipes. You mentioned those standpipes. What exactly is that? Those are in, if you look, maybe go into if you have an apartment building, go into the stairwell, you may see a particular box or some sort of hose, looks like a firefighter hose point. That's where firefighters come. They put their fire hose and they're able to fight the fire directly in the location of the fire. They can take those hoses, they can go right into the stairwell, place their fire hose into that standpipe, and then fight the fire from the floor directly where that fire is taking place. Neither of those were present in this building, which was built in 1968. So it was exempted from having that required sprinklers that you're going to find in modern day apartment buildings. So I asked lawmakers here of both parties, is it time to maybe mandate that these older buildings no longer have that grandfather clause, that they have to retrofit the bringing in the sprinklers into those older buildings? And we heard some interesting answers from people. We're going to bring that to you tonight on Fox 6 News at 5 o'clock. Speaker Voss, when I asked him, he's a Republican leader here, he said he's worried about the costs. He said, we already have a housing affordability problem in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee where people are having trouble finding affordable housing. And he said if you add another requirement onto landlords to add sprinklers that might now be grandfathered in, requirement because they have older buildings, so that's going to add to the cost of rent, and that's going to lead to more people having a problem finding affordable housing. So that was what Speaker Voss said when I asked him about this question. Democrats said now is the time to at least start asking questions about what the next step should be. They say it's too early to say, okay, it's time to mandate retrofitting of these sprinkler systems in older buildings, but they do say it's time now, the loss of life, 5 people dying, it's time now to ask that question.
And I'm sure, as you mentioned, the money is kind of the crux of this, right? Who would pay for it, where that money would come from, is kind of the idea that this would be the landlord's obligation if something were to go through in terms of a state law. And then that's where Speaker Voss is worried the cost could get passed on to the actual renters in this case versus potentially the state. Maybe the legislature and the governor agreeing to do something using perhaps some of that surplus or some of the state funds to help out in some of these larger buildings around the state. Is that kind of the question back and forth?
Right, exactly. And even like the Democrats that I talked with that were supportive of at least asking questions now, none of them wanted to lay out exactly what needed to happen next as far as mandating sprinklers, because they know that we do have old buildings there. It is expensive to add these pipes. When we talked with the union yesterday, they said, hey, it's not more expensive than putting in premium carpeting. So they're saying it does cost money, but it's something that could be affordable to landlords. Now, of course, the landlords, as Speaker Voss said, are going to that cost if they do have to have a mandate of sprinklers. And Speaker Voss said they're going to send it to somebody. They're going to send it to the tenants that are going to have the higher rent, according to Speaker Voss.
That is interesting, though, Jason. I was going to ask about the cost. It sounds like something that would be an expensive thing, at least according to the union that's doing the work. It says it's actually on par with carpet. Is that basically what you said? That it's not maybe the exorbitant cost that someone might have seen, like assume retrofitting an entire building to have this sprinkler system set in? Yeah.
Right, exactly. But then, you talk to people that are opposed to potential mandates, and they talk about, well, now you're dealing with these old buildings. What is in old buildings? Lead paint. So now all of a sudden, the critics are going to say you're going to go in there and disturb some lead paint potentially. That's going to put other health issues, other safety issues at play. The other people that are supporting having more strict mandates regarding sprinklers are going to say, there's no price. Human life you can't put a price on human life. You got to put forward what's going to help protect lives. And in this instance, in that apartment building, we have 5 humans that are now dead. The people, the fire chief and others are just saying, you can't put a price on that.
Yeah, interesting, back and forth, and hard to argue with that as well. Jason, let me ask you this. I know you've been covering kind of the political side to it and some of the debate over what we do after this story. The investigation is still continuing, right? We still don't know the cause of that fire inside the building. We just know kind of the reasons that it became so bad and spread so much, right? We're still waiting on that from investigators.
Yeah, and we are going to be hearing, Carl, from investigators in about a half hour or so. I'm not sure what time it is right now, but about 2:30 we're going to hear from those investigators. We will be bringing that on the live stream. You can see it on our, you'll be able to watch it on our website, fox6now.com, or on the mobile app. You can click on the story and it will populate there. You can watch the live feed of the fire chief. He's going to be joined by other leaders as well, including the Sprinkler Fitters Association. They're going to have a representative there speaking as well. So we're going to hear from them maybe a little bit about the ongoing investigation. You know, I did speak with the owner of that building. She has ideas of what caused this, but you know, until we hear more from the investigators, I don't want to speculate. But you know, she tells me she's going to rebuild, or you know, she's been working with an insurance company that are going to repair the building and have people come back into the building. As far as why don't they have sprinklers, you know, she said, listen, I am following the code. They are exempted from those sprinklers, and she said they do pass the yearly fire inspection. So the city Department of Neighborhood Services every single year will inspect these buildings, and part of that inspection is a fire inspection, and the last one happened in March, so just a few months ago, and this building did pass that safety inspection from the city.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know we don't want to get too much into this. It can be different circumstances, both statewide or municipality by municipality, what constitutes an old building, what constitutes whether you're required or not to have sprinklers. How about for people around the state watching this, certainly feeling for the pain of those people who lost lives, others out of a home? The Red Cross is helping dozens of them right now as they try to pick up the pieces after the fire. Any kind of tips that you've heard either from fire officials, from the sprinklers union, anything like that, about what to do if you're worried right now? If you're watching this and you're worried that that same thing could happen in your building, how do you go about some of those discussions, and where do you go from here?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we heard in Aaron's story last night. He had a gentleman that he spoke with that had a fire extinguisher and tried to use a fire extinguisher, and this fire was so massive that fire extinguisher wasn't able to solve the problem. As far as if you're worried about your own building, you know, you can check in. You can look at the safety inspections. Those are public documents. So if you live in Milwaukee or another city, you can check in with code enforcement, or for Milwaukee, it's Department of Neighborhood Services. You can check in with them to see, is the building that I lived in, did it pass its safety inspection? Has there been any warnings? Have there been any orders that the building had a problem that needed to be fixed for my own personal safety in my own building that I'm living in? Those are things that you can access for your own particular building if you want to know. You know, is part of this, does my building have safety fire sprinklers? Does it have standpipes? Those are things that you can check both visually, but it will also be part of the record as you get these documents from the city, because as one of the, you know, what they're doing is they're also notating in those fire inspections that, you know, sprinklers, et cetera. And these older buildings are exempted. That's just part of the law, that when this became law in the 1970s to have fire sprinklers in the buildings that were built before that, they were exempted from it, grandfathered in.
Yeah, as you so well said.
If it's a major issue for you, if it's a major issue, you know, you have to ask yourself those serious questions about what happens next.
Yeah, as you so perfectly said there, that the same building that we're covering from that deadly fire passed its inspection this March, just a couple months before this deadly fire killed 5 people inside. Jason Calvi reporting from outside the state capitol for us here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. All right, Jason, so you said you've spoken to Republican Robin Vos, you've spoken to Democratic lawmakers as well. Anyone else you're planning to chat with today beforehand, or just kind of see what comes out of that press conference around 2:30 or so today, as you said, just about 30 minutes from now?
The 2:30 press conference is going to be really key, Carl, because we are going to hear, from the fire chief. We already shared his thoughts on the fact that there was no sprinklers and no standpipes in the building, but we're also going to be hearing from the Fire Sprinklers Association, and that's somebody that I was in touch with over the phone, and we haven't actually been able to talk yet, but I wanted to get his insight as well. And there's associations of apartment owners that are against mandates and such. So I definitely want to get in touch with them as the day progresses now, as we get closer and closer to our broadcast time of 5 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, certainly will be interesting to see. Most of what we've heard from the fire chief came right after that fire, so it was quite reactive to the firefight that his crews were going through. Now we get the chance to hear a little bit more from the fire chief, kind of looking forward, not just at this building, but at the larger issues for the city of Milwaukee and potentially around the state as well. Jason Calvi will be on top of that for us. Thank you very much, my friend, for joining us live there out in Madison in the middle of your workday. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl.
And as Jason gets back to his work, he mentioned it, we did as well, that 2:30 press conference with the fire chief and other investigators, as well as the union rep there, coming to you around 2:30. Now, the Wisconsin Live Desk wraps up at 2:30, so that's a little bit unfortunate timing. We would have brought that for you, but we will be carrying it for you in another capacity, both here on Fox Local as well as on fox6now.com, the Fox 6 Milwaukee YouTube channel as well. So while the Live Desk technically wraps up at 2:30, that, of course, will be something we have for you on our digital platforms going forward the rest of the day. And then look for Jason's full report this evening on Fox 6 News here on Fox Local, as he's in Madison reporting for us on a potentially statewide issue that certainly hits close to home for people here in Milwaukee. We're going to take another break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. Still much more to get to over the next 25 minutes or so. We'll see what we find after this break.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
It is the Wisconsin Live Desk as we roll right along on this Tuesday afternoon, 2:07 for you here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We're going to get you back out to Washington, D.C. We heard a little bit from Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer earlier discussing possible cuts in the Republican proposed spending bill to Medicaid. Now, Senator Schumer, along with other senators, are specifically addressing cuts to the World Trade Center health program, set up after, of course, the events of 9/11, both the people killed that day, but the first responders who have dealt with health issues for years and years and years after the events of 9/11 back in 2001. Let's get you back out to Washington, D.C. right now, where senators are discussing possible cuts to the World Trade Center health program.
The basic information that we need. What is Dr. Howard's employment status? Whether the program is enrolling new patients and members, certifying new treatments. How many staff critical to the work of the World Trade Center program remain? These are basic questions that he has to answer. September 11th, 2001 was one of the worst days in America's history. And the traumas that so many Americans endured as a result live on in those communities and in those families today. It's why the American people made this solemn promise to never forget the sacrifices of our first responders, and why we created the World Trade Center Health Program in the first place, to give them care. So we will not waste any more time fighting for our first responders and family members. We are demanding answers, and we're demanding them now. Senator Schumer.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand, and thank you for your great leadership here. I want to thank our advocates as well, John Field, Thomas Hart, Andrew Ansborough, Mariana James, and so many others. Now, we're here today because of our sacred promise, never forget. And that sacred promise is under attack. Ever since he was confirmed, Robert Kennedy Jr. has tried to gut the World Trade Center health program. Not trim, not tweak, not fix, but gut. Just look at the chaos that's been swirling over the last few weeks. Doctors and staff who manage and provide care to our sick 9/11 first responders fired, some rehired, others fired again. Total chaos. And this is the last place on earth where there should be chaos, because people are sick and people are dying and people need their health care. The firefighters and heroes who work the pile, helping rebuild after the darkest hours in America, are sick with cancer from the toxic air they breathe and other illnesses as well. Many are dying. Is this how you treat their health care? Up to 800 first responders, up to 800 have had their enrollments halted. As many as 1,200 written treatment approvals have been stopped. These are approvals that are needed, whether it's for a medicine or a treatment at a hospital, stopped. And people get sicker, and people are less likely to live when that happens. As Kirsten said, Dr. John Howard, the great director, was sent packing, then he was supposedly reinstated. For how long, nobody knows. He doesn't know. Now, this infuriates me. I met with Senator Kennedy before his confirmation. I asked him, would he protect the World Trade Center Hope program? Kennedy looked me in the eye and committed to protecting the World Trade Center health program. He lied. Kennedy lied. He has broken that commitment, and now he'll have to answer for it, because I know there will be questions asked of him at the committee tomorrow. Kennedy told me he had friends, acquaintances who died on 9/11. Well, has he forgotten them? What about those people? He looked me in the eye and said, I remember those people. Democrats are going to hold Senator Kennedy's feet to the fire. We're going to demand answers about his betrayal of 9/11 heroes. We'll demand answers about the cuts and the firing. We'll demand answers about the chaos, confusion, and uncertainty. No more broken promises. No more empty statements from Kennedy. We need the truth. We need the truth on what happened and what they're doing at the World Trade Center health program. We need them to firmly commit and publicly to never cut this program again, never cut it again, to never cut the health care or the workforce of this program again. My message to Secretary Kennedy and to President Trump is this: if you think you can quietly gut the World Trade Center health program without a fight, you are dead wrong. Senator Gillibrand and I, and all the advocates here today, will never let up. The health care of our 9/11 first responders is not government waste, Mr. Musk, Mr. Vote, Mr. Doge. It's sacred human life. Gutting the World Trade Center health program is not efficiency. What it is a different word: cruelty, meanness, anti-American. The World Trade Center health program, because of the people here, many of them, took years to build. It took the courage of many folks. Some of the folks are here today, some of them are gone, who walked the halls and are now gone, succumbed to the illnesses they acquired on 9/11. But because of the work of those people and the people here, it's the law, not a whim, not a maybe, not if I want to, a law. And now Kennedy is trying to take that all away in the blink of an eye. The chaos and confusion that this administration has created will not blind us to the reality. What they are doing is not never forget. What they are doing is screw you. That's a total betrayal, and it won't happen on our watch. Senator John Field.
Thank you, Chuck. Sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to say what everybody else is thinking. Kennedy, you're a fucking liar. It's that simple. The secretary is disingenuous. The secretary is uniquely unqualified to hold any government position. But what are we doing today? Are we talking about a bill we've been walking the halls of Congress to get passed that they took off the table in December? Are we talking about Dr. Howard losing his job and the 15 doctors being fired? Are we talking about restoring NIOSH? What are we here for? This is 20 years of bullshit that you guys keep putting in front of us that we have to fight. You know, nobody apologized after 9/11. Nobody. Nobody said sorry for making him sick, her sick, him sick. Instead, we created the World Trade Center Health Program. That was their apology. Create the World Trade Center Health Program, give them free care, health care, then make us walk the halls of Congress and get it extended to 2090. And then to gut it, you took your own apology away from us. So what are we talking about today? You know, if Dr. Howard was an illegal alien, we know his fucking status. Serious. What's Dr. Howard's status? What happens on June 3rd? See, when they gutted NIOSH and Dr. Howard got fired, a fragile fraternity of 140,000 people were up in arms. The healthcare stopped. Now they're all wondering what happens June 3rd. So we stand here today, we have to go back and worry about those 140,000 people who don't know their future. So what are we doing today? I mean, I want to talk about, we'll be back here next week having 30-plus meetings for HR 1410 and S739. So is Kennedy going to come out and make a public announcement before tomorrow's hearing when he gets a new one ripped? Because Senator Kaine, Senator Kim, I want to thank them because I know they've been watching this. So is he going to come out and publicly say Dr. Howard is permanently reinstated? Are those doctors permanently reinstated? Those doctors that ensure the enrollment and the certification process rolls? Is Kennedy going to come out and say he's not going to mess with us anymore? Is Kennedy going to come out and say, you know what, I support HR 1410 and S739? Is the administration going to support HR 1410? Because the administration can just say, hey, everybody in Congress, support HR 1410. You know what? There's a thing, that reconciliation that they're doing right now, they can slip us in there. We can all be gone, and John Peel doesn't have to curse in front of everybody. But today, we're here, and what are we doing? We're fighting the boogeyman. Who's our enemy? Kennedy? He's an idiot. Again, grossly unqualified to hold any position in the United States federal government. What an incompetent, arrogant, dumb, stupid, repulsive fool to recklessly, without any humanity, hurt 140,000 people. If you're not angry, then you're not human. Have a good one.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chuck. I'd now like to invite up Thomas Hart, our president of Citizens for Extension of the Droga Act and president of Local 94, International Union of Operating Engineers.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Schumer. Thank you, Senator Gilbride. John, today we're here for two things. We're here to say thank you to the people who have continued to support our fight and our effort from day one. These people behind me and the people that have gone before you, people that have gotten sick, the people that have been shut down, have risen from the ashes and the chaos and the confusion. We know about chaos, confusion, dark times. These people answered the bell. They were there for it. Chaos and confusion are nothing new to us. We're pros at it. What's going on today is an atrocity. We're here today also, John, to hold people accountable for the things that they're doing. That's what's got to come out of today, tomorrow, and every day forward. People need to be held accountable for what they're doing. I hope that people have the courage to ask those questions tomorrow when he's sitting on that floor, because he is not qualified to do the things he does. John Howard came into a time of chaos, confusion, and probably produced one of the most successful programs that this country has ever seen coming out of this Capitol building. The man is a hero. The way he's being treated is completely disrespectful. Think about being diagnosed with cancer When you answered the bell, 15, 17, 18, 20 years later, you come down in the gestation period with cancer. Because in the deepest, darkest times of our country, in my city, the city of New York, it hit close to home. Now they're being told that they're not going to have anybody there for them. Nobody wants to talk about the mental health aspect of what we're dealing with. Think about that if that was your aunt, your uncle. Think about what they're thinking about. There's nowhere to turn. They're scared to death. The only thing facing them is death because we turned our backs on them. Never forget. I know in my local, we will never, ever forget. These folks here, they're never going to forget. And guess what? We're never going away. So tomorrow, please have your colleagues have the courage to stand up the same way these people have, and we'll continue the fight. Thank you.
If you're wondering, that name that keeps getting referenced there, Dr. John Howard, he is the administrator of the World Trade Center Health Program, was dismissed, was reinstated, and there's kind of been a back and forth, appeared to be reinstated just days after the Trump administration had fired him. Again, the administrator of the World Trade Center Health Program for years and years. That is the name they keep referencing there. We have to take a short break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. A couple things, actually, this maybe we'll wait a little bit. Normally we would take a break here right now. This just happened. Someone just stepped to the podium outside of the LA County Courthouse where the Menendez brothers resentencing trial is happening. Let's listen in because this might be breaking news on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Morning for the family. For those of you who are in the courtroom or have read about it, they've, I think, at great personal expense, have bared their souls about the trauma they've endured. Interestingly, the generational trauma that the family, extended families, both the Andersons and the Menendez families have endured. I think it's astonishing to me that, and I think we talked about it on the record, that it's a unicorn-style situation where you have horrific crimes that nobody is walking away from, but also remarkable, almost unparalleled rehabilitation and redemption. The focus of an 1172, which is the resentencing hearing, because the public seems to get a lot of disinformation, frankly, coming out of the DA's office, but the focus of 1172 is on redemption. The focus of 1172 is the legislature has spoken that they want to encourage rehabilitation. That is the law. The law is you do not relitigate the facts of the crime as the DA wants to do, and at least if they were going to do that, they should probably try and get the facts correct, but that's because they've been watching disinformation themselves. The fact is that the family, all of the living members of the family, are unified in their belief that they should be released and released immediately. Obviously, for Terry, who is Jose's sister and Kitty's best friend, and for Joan, who is not only Kitty's older sister, but has proclaimed that she was almost a surrogate mother, and all of the extended family, they want them out, and they want them out now. And that's hopefully what the result that we're aiming for. I'll take a couple of questions.
So there you hear it, no word yet on whether or not the resentencing will happen for the Menendez brothers. Their attorney there discussing the family's side of things, while the LA County District Attorney there has quite a different view on things. We do have to take that break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We'll come back and see what we hear from this attorney or anything else happening in the moment on the Live Desk after this.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Hey, Carl Defenbaugh back with you. Just a few minutes to go here on this Tuesday edition of the Wisconsin Live Desk, joining you from our Milwaukee studios. I want to show you a feed that we're getting right now. Unfortunately, this will happen right after the live desk ends, but it's something you will be able to see here on Fox Local as well as on our different digital and streaming platforms through Fox 6. This is a press conference that is planned for 2:30 with a number of different fire officials today. So this is a 2:30 press conference with Milwaukee Fire Department Engine 32, arriving. I was reading some details of this. Now, this press conference will take place today at the community event room with different representatives, including the fire chief and others, discussing the deadly fire in Milwaukee over the weekend. 5 people died in that apartment fire near 27th and Highland. 6 other people taken to the hospital, ranging in age from as young as 1 all the way up to a 76-year-old. And we know that one of those people still is in critical condition. We're not sure which one of the 6 hospitalized after that fire, but also 5 deaths. And as we heard in a report from Jason Calvi, the fact that there were no sprinklers in that building, no standpipes in that building, stairwells, certainly of concern to the fire chief and other officials, though the question of what you do about some of these old buildings is very much in question. As we start to wrap things up here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, some of the other things that we are tracking for you here on this, let's see, gorgeous now day in Milwaukee. We still have some of those fun fog that Stephanie Barrichello detailed for us coming off of Lake Michigan, the winds from the southeast kind of pushing that fog off of the lake and into downtown. Pretty beautiful view, though, and some interesting photography options for people out there as we give you a live look here on this Tuesday afternoon. This has been the Wisconsin Live Desk, here for you every Monday through Friday from 12:30 until 2:30, bringing you the news as it happens from around the state, around the country. Today we went around the world with the president's visit in Saudi Arabia, day 1 almost in the books there. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll be back here